Something has cracked between men and women. Not a small fracture, a silent continental drift no one wants to admit. For generations, there was an unspoken deal. Men gave structure, women gave trust. Men provided protection, women provided partnership. And though imperfect, it worked. Until ideology convinced everyone that the deal itself was oppression. Now that balance lies in ruins. Every conversation about love, marriage, and family feels like walking through the remains of something sacred. Bones of promises that no longer mean anything. You can feel it in the hesitation between texts, the cynicism in online dating, the constant accusation that someone must be exploiting someone else. We built a battlefield where intimacy used to live. According to modern psychology, social contracts between genders were once reinforced by reciprocal validation. Both sides felt seen and valued in their roles. But now those roles have been redefined, criticized, and blurred beyond recognition. What was once mutual dependence is now mutual suspicion. He used to feel pride in being a provider. Now he's told that offering stability is a form of control. He used to believe that being gentle was noble. Now it's interpreted as weakness. He watches as the same society that taught him to respect women now mocks him for expecting respect in return. Every instinct that made him reliable is being rewritten as outdated, even dangerous. And she feels it too, though differently. She was promised empowerment, freedom, choice. Yet that freedom often comes with invisible costs, emotional exhaustion, loneliness, and a gnawing sense that independence isn't intimacy, that she's surrounded by options, but not meaning. Both genders are haunted by the same ghost, the loss of trust. He can't lead without being accused of domination. She can't follow without being accused of submission. Every gesture has become political. Every word is weighed for offense. Love turned into negotiation. Connection became a debate. In counseling offices across the world, the stories sound the same. A man tries to express hurt and is told to man up. A woman expresses dissatisfaction and is told she's ungrateful. Neither is heard. Both are hardened. And what begins as misunderstanding becomes resentment disguised as self-protection. The old deal is dead, but no one told the heart. This death didn't happen in one moment. It was death by 1,000 headlines, by influencers preaching independence over partnership, by laws and norms that made men disposable in families, by entertainment that mocked the masculine and glorified the self. The modern man now walks through emotional rubble, trying to find purpose where his predecessors found duty. He's told to be strong but soft, assertive but deferential, masculine but not too much. Every move risks condemnation. So many stop playing the game altogether. They retreat quietly, not from women, from failure without cause. They stop explaining themselves because no one's listening. They stop trying to be chosen because they realize the criteria keep changing. But when millions of men step back at once, something fundamental shifts in the social fabric. Dating collapses. Birth rates fall. Loneliness spikes. And everyone starts asking, what happened? He didn't disappear because he stopped caring. He disappeared because caring became dangerous. What looks like indifference in modern men is often a form of self-defense. Psychological armor forged in the fires of rejection, manipulation, and public shame. He's not emotionless. He's exhausted. According to attachment theory, when connection repeatedly leads to pain or betrayal, the psyche adapts. It learns avoidance as survival. This is the avoidant response. the instinct to withdraw rather than risk humiliation again. And that's what's happening on a global scale. Millions of men are not just lonely. They're protecting themselves from intimacy itself. He used to open up. He used to try explaining how he felt, why things hurt. But every attempt was turned against him. His vulnerability weaponized, his honesty mocked. So he learned the most effective lesson of the digital age. The less you reveal, the less they can use against you. It begins subtly. He takes longer to reply, stops posting, stops explaining his side of the story. Then one day, he's simply gone. Not in body, in spirit. He's there, but unreachable, smiling without warmth, listening without engaging. The conversation is polite but empty because he's already learned that openness invites pain. Society calls this emotional unavailability. But beneath the label lies trauma, not of the battlefield, but of the heart. He was told for years to be more sensitive, then punished the moment he was. He starts keeping his emotions like classified documents. He doesn't argue anymore, doesn't defend himself. Silence becomes his protest, and solitude becomes his sanctuary. He stops trying to fix broken relationships, stops chasing validation. Instead, he studies human behavior like a scientist studying contagion. Detached, analytical, cold. He recognizes patterns, the shifting standards, the performative empathy, the conditional affection. And once you see those patterns, it's hard to unsee them. Withdrawal isn't weakness, it's strategy. But strategy comes with a cost. Emotional distance may protect, but it also isolates. The walls he built to keep pain out also keep peace out. He starts mistaking isolation for freedom, quiet for safety, numbness for control. Deep down, he knows it's not peace, it's paralysis. He's not healed, he's hidden. And the longer he hides, the harder it becomes to return. Yet the world doesn't see that struggle. It mocks it, calling it fragile masculinity. It ridicules his detachment as coldness, not realizing it's armor forged from heartbreak. He's not angry at women. He's disillusioned with the game. He's done proving his worth to a system that only rewards his silence and punishes his sincerity. And slowly, this detachment begins spreading, from one man to another, like a silent brotherhood of ghosted hearts. Men who don't hate anyone, they've just seen too much. Men who've realized that niceness, in a world that weaponizes empathy, is a liability. But withdrawal isn't the end of the story, because when a man's silence lasts too long, it doesn't just protect him, it starts changing who he is. Every man who disappears eventually returns, but never as the same man. Silence changes people, especially when it was born from betrayal. Withdrawal starts as escape, but for many men it becomes alchemy, the transformation of pain into clarity. He stops performing, stops seeking validation, and in that vacuum of silence, something begins to crystallize. What emerges is not bitterness, it's awakening. He starts seeing through the illusions, the performative empathy, the moral double standards, the endless social scripts that taught him his value was in how much he could give. According to behavioral psychology, cognitive dissonance breaks when the pain of pretending outweighs the fear of rejection. That's when transformation begins. He no longer wants to be seen as the good guy. He wants to be real. He realizes that niceness was never the same as goodness. Niceness was performance, a learned behavior meant to earn affection, to keep the peace, to be acceptable. But acceptance built on submission isn't love. It's control disguised as virtue. So he rewrites his role. He begins speaking less, but when he does, it carries weight. He doesn't chase anymore because he understands that attention is currency, and he refuses to spend it cheaply. He learns the language of boundaries, of silence, of selective presence. And here's the paradox. When he stops trying to be liked, he becomes magnetic. Because authenticity in a world of masks is dangerous. People feel it before they understand it. He stops apologizing for male instincts, to protect, to build, to lead, because he sees they were never flaws. They were just shamed virtues. He stops fighting to be understood and starts observing who even wants to understand. Silence doesn't break a man. It rebuilds him. But not everyone can handle his transformation. Friends who once relied on his softness grow uncomfortable with his new strength. Partners who once dictated the emotional terms feel threatened by his calm detachment. They call him changed, as if evolution were betrayal. Yet this is what self-respect looks like when it grows teeth. He stops trying to fix the world and starts mastering his own. He cuts out shallow interactions and rebuilds his inner circle with those who value loyalty over image. There's a quiet fire in him now, one that doesn't need to announce itself. He doesn't argue ideology or morality online anymore. He doesn't post his frustrations or victories. His life becomes offline warfare, silent discipline, strategic restraint, spiritual reconstruction. But here's the irony. When a man starts living this way, grounded, selective, emotionally sovereign, society calls it withdrawal. It's not withdrawal. It's evolution. He's not retreating from the world. He's reclaiming his power from it. He knows something fundamental now. Not everyone deserves access to him. Not every argument needs an answer, and not every pain requires witnesses. But transformation comes with a shadow. Because the moment he finds peace in isolation, the world tries to pull him back in, to test if he's really changed. The moment a man finds peace, the world declares war on him, because a peaceful man is uncontrollable, and control is the only language modern society truly understands. He starts to live quietly. No arguments, no noise, just consistency, gym, work, solitude. He becomes invisible to the chaos that once drained him. But peace doesn't go unpunished. People who once fed on his emotional reactions now sense starvation. They provoke, they bait. They call his calmness cold, his detachment narcissism, because his lack of reaction exposes their addiction to drama. In psychological terms, it's called homeostatic disruption. The system, the relationship, the social circle, even the culture, was calibrated to his emotional compliance. When he steps out, equilibrium collapses. They don't want him healed. They want him available. The modern world doesn't fear male anger. It fears male indifference, because anger can be controlled, redirected, weaponized, monetized. But indifference? That's liberation. Every system built on male validation, the workplace, relationships, even social media, begins to lose power when a man no longer needs applause. When he chooses solitude over shallow approval, the machine stutters. So, the war begins. Not with violence, but with subtle sabotage. He'll be guilted for being emotionally unavailable. He'll be told his peace is loneliness, that his discipline is obsession, that his silence is toxic. Every virtue of restraint gets reframed as pathology. Because if men stop seeking external approval, they stop being predictable consumers of products, of attention, of validation. A peaceful man cannot be marketed. They'll push the narrative of endless self-improvement. not for mastery, but for insecurity. They'll say, "You're not enough yet." And as long as he believes it, he stays plugged in, chasing an image instead of truth. But the real war isn't fought outside. It's fought inside, between the version of him that still craves recognition and the one that knows he no longer needs it. He feels that tension in silence during late nights when his phone doesn't buzz, when nobody checks in. That's when the test begins. Can he handle peace without distraction? Can he stand still while the world demands noise? The strongest men are not those who fight the world, but those who refuse to be distracted by it. He starts realizing how addicted he was to chaos disguised as connection. The arguments, the validation loops, the moral performances, they all served one purpose: to keep him emotionally accessible. Now that he's not, they call him distant. But distance is not cruelty. Distance is definition. He watches people panic when he no longer participates in the game, when he answers slowly, walks away from circular arguments, or simply smiles instead of defending himself. They call it arrogance. It's not. It's alignment. He doesn't chase anymore because he's finally at home in stillness. He understands that peace is not the absence of struggle. It's the presence of control. Control of one's time, one's emotions, one's energy. And once a man learns to protect that peace, he becomes untouchable. But every man who attains peace will face one final test, not from the world, but from within. Because peace reveals what was hiding in the silence all along, the shadow he's been running from. Silence doesn't erase demons. It only makes their footsteps louder. When a man stops talking, the world thinks he's healed. But in truth, he's only quiet because the war has moved inward. The enemy now wears his own face. For years, he's hidden behind productivity, behind logic, behind routine. But the human psyche is cyclical. What's repressed doesn't die. It waits. Jung called it the shadow, the parts of the self we exile because they contradict our image. And in solitude, the shadow returns, not as memory, but as presence. It comes through dreams, through sudden bursts of anger, through an ache that has no name. It whispers, "You're not done yet." At first he dismisses it. He doubles down on control, tighter schedule, stricter discipline, more distance. But repression is a slow poison. Every attempt to suppress emotion only makes it stronger. He starts waking up at 3 a.m., haunted by flashes, faces from the past, mistakes he thought buried. The silence that once felt peaceful now feels like suffocation, because peace without integration becomes paralysis. Psychologically, this is called shadow confrontation. It's the stage where the unconscious demands recognition. If ignored, it manifests as depression, nihilism, or burnout. If faced, it becomes transformation. He remembers the people he hurt, not out of malice, but out of avoidance. He recalls the moments he betrayed himself for acceptance, the truths he swallowed to appear strong. Each memory pierces through the illusion of the quiet, peaceful man. He realizes his silence was never peace. It was exile. Peace without integration is just escapism. He begins to see the paradox. You can't truly escape the world until you've faced yourself. Because whatever you run from, fear, guilt, shame, follows you into solitude. And the quieter your life becomes, the louder those ghosts scream. This is where most men break. Some relapse into chaos just to drown out the echo. Alcohol, meaningless relationships, digital distractions, anything to escape the confrontation. But a few stay. They sit in the darkness and listen. They let the shadow speak. And in that unbearable honesty, something changes. He starts to understand his anger, not as evil, but as protection. His loneliness, not as weakness, but as a reminder of unhealed bonds. He realizes that the same traits society condemned, intensity, control, solitude, were once survival mechanisms. Now, they must evolve. He begins to write again, not for followers, but for clarity. He revisits old conversations, not to justify, but to understand. The silence that once hid him now becomes sacred space, a forge. The shadow, once enemy, becomes guide. When the integration begins, there's no grand revelation, just small acts of acceptance, a deep breath, a forgiving thought, a return to presence. For the first time, he doesn't fear being seen, because he has finally seen himself. But healing doesn't end with integration. It ends with rebirth, when the man who vanished decides to return to the world, not as who he was, but as who he truly is. When a man disappears long enough, the world forgets him. But sometimes, that's the only way he remembers himself. He reemerges slowly, not with noise, not with declaration, but with presence. He no longer posts to prove he exists. He is existence, the need to display, to seek acknowledgement, to explain his silence, gone. This is not the same man who vanished. He's leaner in spirit, heavier in awareness. There's a stillness in his eyes that unsettles those who once knew him. Because he no longer reacts, he observes. He doesn't debate anymore. He discerns. He's lived through 3 deaths: the death of performance, the death of validation, and the death of illusion. What's left is essence, stripped of pretense, sharpened by solitude. He now understands what the silence was really for, to reset the soul's compass. Psychologically, this is individuation, the process Jung described as becoming whole. It's the final stage of inner evolution, where one transcends the false self built for approval. Most never reach it because it demands everything: your comfort, your image, your former identity. But he paid the price. And now he's free. He moves differently through life now, slower but more deliberate. He no longer overshares his thoughts. He guards them like sacred currency. His solitude isn't isolation anymore. It's stewardship of peace. He doesn't reject the world. He simply refuses to belong to it. That's the paradox of rebirth. You return to the same world, but nothing in you is the same. Rule card. A man is truly free when he can be seen and remain untouched. He starts creating again. Not content, but meaning. Conversations that matter. Work that echoes something real. He speaks only when words add value. And when he does, people listen, not because he demands attention, but because he embodies it. The world doesn't know what to make of him now. He doesn't fit the algorithm. He doesn't chase trends or bend under guilt. He's become something modern society can't easily categorize. A man content with obscurity. He once thought silence was emptiness. Now he knows silence is space, the space where truth lives. He understands that his worth was never in visibility, but in vision. Not in being seen, but in seeing clearly. He doesn't fear being forgotten anymore. Because legacy isn't about being remembered. It's about living in alignment with something eternal. The invisible man has not vanished. He has become transparent. Light passes through him now. There's nothing left to hide. And that's where true power begins. The story doesn't end when the man stops posting. It begins when he no longer needs to prove that he's real.